Hi, my name is Rob Goddard, and I'm joined today by the illustrious Rena Poppet from Carter Bond Solicitors. Hello, Rena. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rob. How are you?
Good, very good. It's a clearing day in the UK, and I know we've got some international people dialing in internationally, as far and wide as the UAE.
Oh, brilliant.
I know.
That would be good, yeah.
It's during midwinter in the UK that you realise how Dubai and Abu Dhabi looks very attractive.
I know.
Anyway, thank you for joining me as my guest expert. And I was totting up. I mean, you probably won't thank me for saying this, but I was totting up. There's over 30 years experience of selling businesses between me and you.
There is, without giving our age away though, Rob. Keep that a bit of secret.
I'm increasing the average, obviously, significantly. So we're going to attempt, for the audience listening and tuning into this, we're going to attempt to give you 30 years experience over the next 3 hours in 3 1-hour bite-sized chunks. So that's our task, Rena.
Yep, just we can do that. That's fine.
So each of the 3 sessions, I've got a presentational piece just really to set the scene and give some food for thought all around the subject of how to sell a business for a premium price. Because anyone can sell a business for a discounted price. What we're interested in these next 3 sessions is how to sell it for its top price. So let's delve in, and there will be a Q&A session at the end of every 1-hour session. So probably about half an hour of training. If you have a burning question, jot it down, put it in the Q&A box, and I'll make sure that questions are posed either to myself or to Rena, depending whether it's legal or whether it's an M&A advisory question. So do make a note of those burning questions and we will answer it. If we run out of time, I promise you, we will get back to you. Either me or Rena will get back to you personally to answer that question. Okay, so first slide. Would help. It's always good in a presentation to have Albert Einstein and to quote him. I think it's a rather good picture of him, actually. A genius with a bit of a twinkle in his eye. And selling a business, whether it's from a legal perspective or marketing a business for sale, you have got to know the rules of the game. It's like dancing, and you're Strictly Come Dancing. You're with the professional. You've never danced before. And you're with a professional, you're teamed up with a professional. You've got to know the steps. And the idea of these next 3 sessions is to help you with what steps are coming up and when you need to use them. And I mean, clearly, you want to, if you're selling a business, you want to have the advantage. You want to have the rub of the green compared to the buyer, because it is usually a buyer's market. I've been doing this for 20 odd years, usually a buyer's market. There are more sellers than there are buyers usually. So the whole idea of this series is to tip the odds in your favor as the seller, whether you're looking to sell your business now or in the future. So what are we going to deliver to you? Well, 2 things, well, a number of things rather. I mentioned about 3 hours. There's knowledge, expertise, there's food for thought, delivered by me and Rena. We will have the Q&A segments at the end of each session, about halfway through, depending on how it goes. If you haven't got a copy of my book, my blue book, here it is. Here's one. Just email me and we'll get something sent to the post to you. If you're dialing in from overseas, then we'll send you an ebook copy. We can also refer you to relevant professional partners. If it's selling your business and it's legal, it's Rena. She's my go-to person. She's also my lawyer for transactions I've dealt with over the years as well. That's why she's on this call. And we are going to bust dozens of myths and what people were told by their friend down the pub or over a glass of wine. We're going to blow those apart because there's quite a few urban myths. So that's what we're going to deliver to you over the next 3 sessions. What's the purpose of the course? Well, it's twofold, really. Number one, we want to prepare and equip business owners in any country and any sector about how to sell a business for a premium price. And I've operated in the mergers and acquisitions field in not only in the UK, but the UAE, the US, Turkey, and mainland Europe. And one thing I've got to say is about 80% of selling a business is identical, regardless of culture, geography, or industry. So these are universal truths that Rena and I will be sharing. Number two, the second purpose really, we want to explain how the business sale process works, because a lot of people are aware of parts of it, but not all of it, and how it hangs together. And more importantly, or just as importantly, we want to outline the pitfalls that lay ahead for any business owner that's looking to sell. We've made the mistakes, and I know I have over the years, so that others don't need to. So it's important that we outline what could go wrong, and more importantly, what to do, what strategies to take or tactics in order to overcome those pitfalls. So course content, just to give you a bit of a review. This session, session number one, I'm going to talk about magic numbers. Going to talk about the 8 most common reasons why businesses don't sell in my 20 years of selling businesses. And I'm going to dispel the 5 top myths about selling a business. And then we'll have the live Q&A. And I can see I've already had a couple of questions come in. So you're first in the priority list. Session 2, which will be tomorrow. I'm going to go through the 10 exit options, how to decide your value proposition, what makes you different from the crowd, your company, how to identify buyers for your business and how to approach them, and then we'll have another live Q&A session for any burning questions. The third and final session, going to cover competitive tension. It's probably the one thing that's missed out more than any other if someone tries to sell their business themselves. We're going to talk about surviving due diligence, and that's definitely a favourite topic I know of Rena's. And we're going to finish off with life after sale. What does life look like after you've sold your business? Because I've been in that position myself more recently. And then we'll have a finish up, brush up session on the Q&A side. And I would say anyone that comes up with a question that stumps either me or Rena, I'll send a bottle of champagne to. So we're looking for the trickiest question, not only one that will help you in your journey and your own situation, but if you've got one that stumps us both, then a bottle of champagne will be winging its way to you. And I'm going to leave you with this thought. You can, once you've heard things that we're going to be sharing over the next 3 hours, you've got a choice. You can either do something with that information, that knowledge, or you can simply do nothing. But that's your choice. Our responsibility is to equip people as best we can for the road ahead. So, session 1. So, who is this Rob Goddard? And why on earth can I talk about it? Talk about the subject of selling businesses. Well, I'm gonna go through that in a moment. I do encourage any business owner to start with the end in mind and to create their magic number. I am going to go through the top 5 myths in this session and reasons why businesses don't sell, the most common reasons that I've found. This is why I'm able to speak with some confidence about selling businesses, because I've had well over 350, it says 360, I think it's 359, so I'll have to change that for future presentations. 359 transactions over the line in the last 2 decades, worth a lot of money. I'm also a multiple business owner, both in the UK and overseas. I've done 4 successful startups, I've had 3 successful management buyouts, and I've raised investment on 5 occasions. So, and I have 6 kids as well. So it's not just the commercial world that I've been busy. I've also been raising family. So that's the intro. Ooh. And I mentioned if you'd like a copy of my book, If it's in the UK, then you get physical copy. If you're overseas listening to this, then it'll be an ebook sent across to you. That is 20 years experience in probably 160, 170 pages.
It's a brilliant book, Rob. I've got it as well and read it and reread it and highlighted it as well.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you for the plug. I mean, someone can either go onto Amazon and buy it and pay me a royalty, or they can just email me. I'll send a free copy out to you. I think it's really interesting when I've met business owners over the years where they're thinking about selling their business. They've come in with my book and they've started quoting some of my own verses and chapters.
Really? That's brilliant.
So I know they've read it. and they've highlighted certain sections. And I've often said, I know that, I wrote it. So it's always good to have a bit of a guide. In the motoring profession, it's called a Haynes manual. How the workings of a car and how, for the DIY motorist. So I mentioned in the intro that I always encourage business owners to do one thing. Forget about the process of selling the business and due diligence and where to find buyers. You've got to start at the end. And that means thinking about life after sale. So what is it in your life? It's not really an M&A thing. It's actually a life question. Where do you see yourself in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Because selling the business is only one part of that. It's an important part, but it's not the only part. So it's actually deciding on the life that you want to lead, architect your own life by starting with the end. Once you've decided on what that might look like, then come into the present day and work out a plan with milestones and tactics as to how you're going to get there. And the first thing to do is to consider what your magic number might be. And there's often a confusion as to what the magic number is and what it's not. The best way of giving an example of magic number is talking about mine. I've always been told when you're training or presenting is to make yourself a little bit vulnerable. So I'm going to make myself a little bit vulnerable to you as the viewer and the audience. Many years ago, I started with, I think it was around 2010. I asked myself 3 questions. I remember where I was. It was I was in a pub, and there was a leatherback chair, open fire. I had a glass of red wine and a blank sheet of paper. And I put down 3 questions because I wanted to plan out my future life, because quite often we're on a bit of a hamster wheel, aren't we, in life? We, one day after another, 1 week after another, and we don't look at things long term. So I asked myself 3 questions. When, how much, and doing what? So my magic number 10 years ago was to build up assets in excess of 5 million pounds, because I'm British, but it could be 5 million euros. It could be 25 million dirham, whatever country you're in. But it's important to start with a number. Now, that isn't the valuation of your business today. A magic number isn't that. Magic number is the capital sum that you're looking to build in your life, so you finish one chapter in your life and start a new one. That is what a magic number is. But doing what? Well, I love heat. I like being in warm countries. I had the disadvantage of being born in the United Kingdom, luckily in the south, in London. Would have been even worse if I was in Scotland, up in the north. But I like being in warm countries. Most of the countries I've ever visited have had palm trees, beaches, beautiful water. And that floats my boat. And I've never had a boat, but that was one thing I did want. I love that fact of having the freedom of sailing across seas and going along coastal waterways to enjoy life and see more of life. So definitely a boat was on my 2020 vision, and a double-decker bus. And that's not necessarily just to go around and see London. For me, you might see a double-decker bus. I see a international language school. And my plan then was to buy a double-decker bus, qualify as an English teacher to teach English to children abroad, and take the bus over there with me and spend time just going around the towns and the villages, initially in Greece, but now in Albania, teaching English from a double-decker bus. Wonderful marketing, advertising hoarding there, Rena, don't you think, on the side?
There is, yeah.
And of course, anything like that going through the villages of Greece or Albania is going to create interest and a following. And all of that with the woman of my dreams. So that was my 2020 vision. And that was set in around 2010. And obviously, as time has gone on, that's now become a historic vision. So in 2020, I created a 2030 vision. I think you can see the pattern here, starting with the end in mind. And I think in terms of 5 and 10 years, but for you, it might be slightly different. So my 2030 vision, same 3 questions. Didn't have the bottle of red wine, but definitely had the roaring fire. But I did have the leather back chair and the blank sheet of paper. So 10 million now. You can see there's a bit of a theme developing. Assets exceeding 10 million. Now that doesn't mean cash necessarily. That could be business assets. That could be stocks and shares. It could be precious metals. Could be pension provision. All of those things are assets, and all of them can be converted at some point. It might be property that you've got. All of those things added together equaling or exceeding a magic number. Assets come in different shapes or sizes. Back in 2010, 2011, 2012, I went through a very low patch in my life, and through stress and depression. And I've had a real heart for business owners over those years, having come out the other side of those very low times to help other business owners that are struggling. And the last couple of years or so have been really hard for many, many business owners. So in this next 10 years, spending more of my time working with business owners to help them on a personal level, not just on a business level. Definitely do want it over the next 10 year or that 10-year period to spend more time talking with business owners, both live, subject to lockdowns around the world, but both live and obviously online, which is one of the reasons I'm doing these training webinars. That's the boat I actually bought, which is a bit different to the one that you saw in the previous screen. It was really interesting. A business friend of mine, when I was talking about boats and gin palaces and that sort of thing, he said, he just smiled and he said, you realize the bigger the boat, the more the expense. I said, oh yeah, more fuel. He said, yeah, but have you calculated how much more fuel? And he said, it's not just the fuel. The bigger the boat, you're going to need staff. You're going to employ them. He said, so what are you going to be using the boat for? I said, oh, we're taking the family out and friends and going out and going around the coastal waterways of Albania. And he said, well, you want a day boat. You don't want a gin palace. So we bought a Greek boat, brand new. It's beautiful. It's black with sand-coloured upholstery. And it's been perfect. What we love doing as family and with friends is putting down the anchor and then jumping off the back into the middle of the bay. No one else around, no noise apart from the waves. Beautiful. And I'm a petrol head, so one of the things that I'm in the process of doing, I've bought my first one, is classic cars collection. I just need more space now, so we need to move house in order to house half a dozen classic cars. So these things can grow. So that's my previous vision, my 2020 vision, and now my current vision. What's yours? Nice rhetorical question. What's yours? Think about it. It's one of the most enjoyable things in life is to try and architect and plan your life. Yes, it will change over time. Things will change. Things will crop up that you never anticipated. But it's really important that you have something to anchor yourself in for the future. And all of that, the 2030 vision with the woman of my dreams. Same woman. So let's get into some of the nitty gritty. Why don't all businesses sell? Don't know whether you're aware, most businesses don't sell at all. Around, at best, actually, 20% of businesses sell. That's the positive spin on it. But that means that 80% plus don't. That's a shocking failure rate. And it's something that M&A brokers often don't talk about, business M&A advisors. In the UK, it's no real different, I know, from personal experience in the UAE. And the US. So there's a high attrition rate. And this should be an enjoyable time for business owners looking forward to the sale of their business, collecting their magic number, whatever that is, and moving off and doing something else in life. And most people are disappointed. And this is the driver why Rena and I want to do these training sessions. So here are the 8 reasons why businesses don't sell. This is probably the most common I've found. I don't know about you, Rena. Have you found that?
Yeah, with so many more as well. So I'm sure I'll probably add to your list as well with my experience. But that is probably the number one reason. Yeah. Yeah,
it's where I found sometimes I've fallen out with someone when they've called me. It happened 2 weeks ago, where they've called me out of the blue. I don't know who they are. They've told me a little bit about their business, and I get to know the numbers a bit, headline stuff. And they're always looking for an indicative price from me, based out of my experience. Sometimes they're disappointed. Often they're disappointed. They want more, usually double or treble what a set of accounts might indicate. But it's really important to have a realistic price in mind. Otherwise, you could be setting yourself up for a lot of time, energy, and money that's spent and getting nowhere. So if you're looking for a realistic price range, give me a call, get in touch with me. I'll use my 20 years experience and several hundred transactions under my belt to try and give you a bit of a guide and a bit of a steer. So that's number one. Number two is the seller changes their mind. I've stopped taking on, over the years, many years ago, I stopped taking on clients that really weren't that committed. You can tell there's certain questions, isn't there, really, you can ask.
Yeah.
We only want committed sellers. Don't want people that it's not the right time for them if they're not committed to it. And committed means time. There is quite a bit of time you have to exercise as the owner of the business. Even if you're using an M&A advisory firm or a business broker, there's quite a bit of time, particularly at the start, and especially at the end during something called due diligence, which we'll cover a bit later in this session. So
I also find, Rob, on that point as well, that usually when it's an owner managed business as well and they're selling it, it's not just up to them. Sometimes I find that the family get involved and have a say, and sometimes sellers have then had seller's remorse and thought twice about selling. So it's a good idea to be open and bring the family in if they've got a part to play in it, and have a say.
Do you know what? That's very true. And it goes back to the point I made in the previous screen, is trying to devise and outline the life that you want. Because that probably is going to be one of the biggest motivators for you want to sell, because you want to sell the business in order to fund that future lifestyle. So buyers pulling out is an irritant. Sorry, sellers pulling out is an irritant to buyers, because the potential buyers are going to be committing time, energy, and money to this transaction. So make sure you're committed. Third one, and it regularly comes up, is businesses that are for sale not hitting their financial forecasts, and/or the statutory accounts that are produced in the past don't stand up to financial scrutiny, and yet they've been produced by an accountancy firm. Go figure. There might be some weird and wonderful things going on, but do make sure that your financial reporting are robust because they're going to stand up to, they're going to be scrutinized particularly during due diligence, maybe by KPMG on the other side. Number 4, and it's just something that you mentioned, Rena, just building on that. Stakeholders, shareholders in a business actually disagreeing on a sale price. And sometimes I've seen this, I've witnessed this, actually in a negotiation meeting with the buyer on the other side of the table. And it's a divide. Some buyers actually have that strategy of the divide and conquer with the seller. So if you've got 3 or 4 shareholders and you're an unscrupulous buyer, maybe that's a charged word, unscrupulous, but certainly if you're looking to unsettle the buyer, why not get them arguing between themselves? Another regular one that comes up is the business is too reliant on the owner. I used to, when I first started selling businesses, I didn't have a minimum threshold of size of business turnover wise. And I learned from bitter experience that that was a mistake. Some businesses are not businesses because they're too small. And actually they're a job for the owner. They're not a business. It's called a business, but it isn't a business. So there needs to be a critical mass for you to sell a business. And I don't know whether you knew this, Rena, but 97% of businesses in the UK turn over less than £500,000.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So that's one of the factors that gives rise to the 80% failure rate, because a lot of businesses stuck up on billboards or businesses for sale, they will never see the light of day. Yet they're taken to market, but they won't ever sell because they're too small. So the solution is to grow the business, give some substance, try and actually go part-time as the owner if you can. Once you're building a talented team around you, maybe don't work 6 days a week. Maybe peg it back to 5, then 4, 3 days a week. Maybe, there's things that you can do over a period of time. You don't want a business that's reliant on the owner. Why? Because the one thing you're not selling is you, because you're going. So please don't make yourself in the center of everything within your business. The same goes of client concentration. I have seen businesses that have 70, 80% of their turnover, annual turnover, is from one client. That is so high risk. Again, if you fall into that category, then build the business by taking on other clients that will help dilute that exposure on client concentration. This is for the buyers. Sometimes they haven't got the money. Do you know there's some time wasters out there, buyer-wise? They would love to buy your business, but they haven't got the wherewithal or the funding. Or they've got some funding, but it's not quite enough. So that can derail a transaction. And the last one, a bit of a smile on my face. I have had this as a reason a business didn't sell years ago. My client didn't disclose to me, or their lawyer, Rena, that he was a convicted felon.
Just for the record, that wasn't me, the lawyer. Oh. Putting it out there.
But there is a lesson in it. Be careful. You need to disclose anything that's material. And of course, the internet is a wonderful thing, but it also has a permanent record. And this criminal conviction you could find on an internet search. So perhaps do an internet search on your company and your name, shareholder's name, just to see what comes up. Pre-armed is pre-warned. Yeah. So those are the 8 reasons. There are others, but you can see 7 out of the 8 are to do with the seller. It's not to do with the buyer at all.
There's one more as well, Rob, if I could just add to that, is that housekeeping, when sellers just aren't ready to sell, they haven't protected their name, their logo, they don't know which staff member registered the domain name or various things, and they're just not ready. They haven't actually looked at their business and got all their house and ducks in order.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because just allowing someone else on. It is interesting, particularly with intellectual property. When I've queried it with folk, they've said oh, well, I haven't got the money to spend on patent, that sort of thing, trademarking, design rights, but it's a full saving, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the thing that's starting to come out is actually to sell a business for a top price, you need to take time to prepare it. That both means commercially and legally. Otherwise, they're going to be paying you far more money, aren't they, later on, Rena, when they engage you in due diligence?
Absolutely.
It's going to take longer.
Yeah, it does. It does. As long as it is. And then now it takes even longer. So, yeah.
Do you offer some sort of pre-due diligence service at all?
We do. It's almost like a business health check, and we have lots of questions and we just go through them. And it's just making sure, you've got updated business terms and conditions. You've got the policies on your website. You own the domain.
Yeah.
You know when it's going to expire. All these things. It's a bit of a checklist as well. And then any gaps. It's like a gap analysis, a bit of a checklist. Any gaps, we'll go back and then recommend what needs to be filled in imminently, what can sort of wait for a while. But then that will help with the sale as well.
I like that. Yeah. And it's good to be made aware, because none of us know everything.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, good. So here about the top 5 myths I'm going to cover. We touched on one or two of them briefly. I've heard this said many times. Every business is saleable. No, it's not. Well, at least 80% statistically aren't in this country, and no different in other countries I've worked. Every business isn't saleable. I guess it's partly true if you say that, if you admit that every business is saleable at a low enough price. But certainly not every business is saleable at a premium price. No chance. In fact, the odds are well stacked against you. This makes me smile whenever I hear it. Most third-party advisors in the M&A space, the vast majority will charge a retainer, a monthly retainer, and then they'll also charge a percentage of the sale price as well, a success fee. Often I've heard business owners say, well, I don't want to pay a retainer. I'll just pay at the back end if the business sells. What's your thoughts on that, Rena? You must have come across it.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I actually use a different tactic. So when I get that, and I get it on the other side with our fees actually. So if I turn it around slightly, and once we sell the business, we'll pay your fees, etc. And I say, well, actually, instead of paying my fees, why don't we do this? Why don't I just take a percentage of your profits in the meantime, or a percentage of whatever? And I phrase it quite carefully, and then I work it out with them. And then they realize actually they're paying me a hell of a lot more doing it this way than if they just pay me. So we do a full circle and then they pay me. So, yeah.
Well, that's very enlightened thinking. I'll take that one. I like that. Generally, I mean, there are a few people in M&A brokers that might do no win, no fee, but there is a reason that they're doing commission only. They'll take the information, they'll plaster it around the internet, send it out on an email distribution list, hoping to get lucky. If they don't get lucky over the first couple of weeks, you won't hear anything more from them. That's certainly been my experience in the UK. It goes back to being committed. There's nothing that gives commitment than paying money for a service. If you're paying money, that also then puts the responsibility on the professional partner that you've engaged to deliver quality service. So no sale, no fee doesn't make any sense at all. Because all you'll get is half-hearted short-termism, which won't actually get you to where you want to get to, which is to sell your business. Unless they get lucky, but I've never thought relying on luck is a good business strategy. this often happens not only in selling a business, but also raising investment funding for growth. The current owner, whether they're looking for investment or to sell, loves their business. They've given birth to it. They've nurtured it like a child, and they're very proud of it. And therefore they think automatically, if they just put up an advert, that the crowds will come flocking. The phone will ring itself off the hook. No, it won't. Sadly, you have to do quite a lot of work to make yourself visible. Your business is visible to the right people in order to attract them into a room and talk about them potentially buying your business or investing in it. So build it and they will come is a philosophy that doesn't work when you're selling a business. The phone won't ring off the hook. It'll be very, very quiet. You can tell I'm old because phones having receivers that are on the hook. So that's the third myth that I've come across regularly. Fourth one, due diligence is just a formality, Rena, isn't it? It's just a box ticking exercise.
It's really simple is the word, isn't it, Rob? That I always get told, and my response is that there's no legal definition for the word simple. And then if somebody tells me it's going to be simple and it's only going to take a week or so, you know that it's going to take a lot longer than that, unfortunately.
Yeah. If only that was the case, really. That it's not a formality at all. In fact, I would go one further, that there is no advantage to the seller of a business at all of due diligence. It's all strengthening the arm for the buyer, because you can bet your bottom dollar, particularly their advisors, who they're going to be paying through the nose with, are going to want to justify their fees to find stuff in the business that can then be used by the acquirer to chip on price and reduce terms. So that it's key that you have more than one option, and we'll cover that in a moment as to how you can get around that. But due diligence is fairly and squarely in favour of the buyer, not the seller. Yeah, I should have put simple and straightforward, shouldn't I, Rena? Yeah. I've done several hundred of these successfully, and they've never been straightforward. There's always bumps in the road. Always.
Yeah, I get a minimum of one client a week who's buying or selling their business saying it's going to be really simple. I always have the script ready.
Yeah, it won't. That's why you need a trusted advisor with you. You know, that's one of the things when you and I have worked together, Rena, on the legal side, when you've done transactions for me, it just is so reassuring to have a listening ear that knows, that's been there before, that knows what's normal and can provide some pragmatic advice. So if you think of doing the legals yourself, don't. If you're thinking of selling a business yourself, don't. If you're thinking that you don't need your accountant involved, don't. Selling a business is a team event. It's not a one-person activity. So having just whizzed through that, the time rattles, doesn't it?
I know.
It seems so much longer when I was practicing it. We've got a live Q&A, and I've had several questions posed to me, I can see in the chat box. So, well, it does. I think it just comes off of what we've just covered. Why can't due diligence be simple? I think that's really good, actually. I've got a straightforward business. Why can't it be due diligence be simple, Rena?
It can be simple if you've got your business all in order and you've got everything ready to present to the buyer, and there's nothing in the closet that we need to inform them about. So, but that rarely happens because, you know, it's a trading business. You probably had it for a long time. You may have started it or inherited it. There's lots of things that have happened in the background with employees. There might have been some IP issues, some regulatory issues, things, you know, that are part and parcel of a business. So the buyer is going to want to find out this information. And especially when they're acquiring the shares, because they're acquiring the assets and the liabilities. So regardless of whether or not they know about it, they're going to inherit all the liabilities. So the lawyers are going to have a field day with the due diligence questions. They could be 10 pages or 30 pages, and then they have a second round of questions as well. So it's really important from the seller's perspective to just, as I said previously, to just get your house in order. Spend some time with a commercial solicitor. It doesn't have to be very long. And just do a checklist and make sure that you've got things in order, so the due diligence process can be fairly straightforward as well.
Brilliant. Second question, when's the best time to sell, says Martin. Now, question mark. I've always said that good businesses always sell. Good, well-prepared businesses always sell. There's never it's really difficult to say when is an optimum time to sell, because you could argue that it's 3 to 5 years before your optimum as a business. Most businesses plateau in performance, but knowing when your business is going to plateau or at what point in the future, I think you'd have to be an expert on NASDAQ or something, really, on futures. It's almost impossible to tell. What I do know, and I had one yesterday, an inquiry, the business is on the decline, has been for the last 3 years, and it's loss-making now. Still solvent, but it's loss-making. And they want to sell. And I said, no, you've got to sell on the up, not on the down, because buyers, you will get interest from buyers, but they're going to want to bargain because the numbers are going the wrong way. So the nearest I can get to that question, Martin, is sell on the up, sell the potential that the numbers are going the right way. And in the hands of a new owner, maybe a larger company with greater resources and infrastructure, it could accelerate step change growth. That would attract a premium price. Have you got anything else that you'd add on to that, Rena?
I would almost, I agree with you that to sell on the up, but also to sell the vision as well. Right. So something like, what else you could do with it. So if I think about my business, there's so much more that we can do with it. And if I was to sell, we're on the up, and I'd say, well, actually, you could do this, and we could think about this, and, branching out nationally, internationally. So there's so much to do, which, it is what a buyer is looking for as well.
Yeah, good point. Paul says, I have no idea how to calculate my magic number. I started up with that at the top of the session, didn't I? Magic number. I don't know what it's worth. So how can I calculate my magic number? I don't value businesses, I think is what Paul's saying. Just to clarify, when I talk about the magic number, I don't mean what your business is worth. There'll be plenty of people that could give a business valuation, your accountant, me, an experienced M&A person, someone who's done it before in your industry, maybe. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that capital sum that you need in order to finish one chapter in your life and start a new one. Only you can come up with that number. It's not for me or your accountant or your FD or anyone else to tell you what your magic number is. You've got to come up with it, ideally with a bottle of wine and an open fire and a leatherback chair and a blank sheet of paper. What else have we got? Okay, Christine. Yeah. So there's three. What are the three things I can do now to improve the saleability of my company? So from a legal perspective, Rena, what would you say?
From a legal perspective, it goes back to just making sure you've got things in order. A buyer doesn't want to come in and start picking up pieces and redoing employment contracts or redoing your terms or registering the trademark, or and so it's important that you get your house in order and get that sorted. But also, if you've got any litigation or disputes, get rid of them before you're selling. A buyer doesn't want to inherit that. You want to just get rid. It's all put away, settlement agreements properly drafted, no comebacks at all. So things like that are really important.
Yeah, when you mentioned about outstanding litigation, I had someone years ago that said to me that he had a bit of a hassle with his insurance company on the factory. The factory burnt down. but the insurance company weren't going to pay up. And that's because someone was welding, but not following health and safety.
Oh, gosh.
Not only did it burn down his factory, it burned down the adjoining factory as well.
Wow. Goodness.
Those sorts of things need to be ironed out, really. Maybe it's, I've had this one, maybe it's a former employee that's taking you to tribunal.
Yeah.
Had that situation, one company, 2 tribunal claims against the same managing director. So, and they want to sell their business. Those sort of things need to be talked about, obviously in confidence. And part of the process of selling a business is knowing what to disclose and when. But I get sure as eggs is eggs. Things like that will come out in the wash, pre or post due diligence. So, okay, I mean, from an M&A perspective, 3 things you can do now to improve the saleability. I've mentioned a couple of them earlier. Definitely get your financial records in order. Make sure they'll stand up to scrutiny. Make sure that you're committed to the process. Knowing what you're going to be doing life after sale is the biggest motivator. Because during those low moments where you feel almost that you want to punch the buyer because they've made a cheeky chip on price or terms, and they keep rewording the documents through their lawyers, don't punch them. Don't send a barbed email to them. Just remember and reflect why you're doing this and what life will be like once the transaction's over the line. And the third thing to do really is make sure you're not the center of your universe. Make sure you're not a legend in your own lunchtime by the business being owner reliant. It's better for you to work on the business, upskill and embrace the talent that you've got in your team and delegate, so that it's actually the team that creates success, not you at the center of it. I think we might have covered this, but Brian's asked, do both of you work on commission only? You go first, Rena.
Do I work on commission only? Well, I can do, but no, I don't. I don't work on commission only. And that's because I think I add value. And I add value throughout the process and the journey which you're going to be going on, right from the beginning to the end and even beyond then, because once you've sold your business, you've exited, the seller's exited. But from my perspective as a lawyer, we still have to do the post-completion bits and pieces. So we're still working. So if I did commission only, that would be months and months before I'd actually ever get paid. No, I don't do commission only, is the short answer.
I would echo that. I don't sell businesses anymore. But in my 40 years of working life, I've never worked on commission only because I've valued what I bring to the party. And whenever someone asks, do you work commission only, Rob? Do you sell businesses on a success fee only basis? I often ask them, well, do all your staff work on commission only then? There's no salaries in your company then. So I think you can guess from that answer, Brian, no. There's a good reason why we don't work on commission only. We want people to be committed to the process, and money brings commitment. Question 6 from Chris. Oh, right. I don't want to provide any warranties on my business. It's sold as seen, just like a second-hand car. I added that bit on. Well, what do you say to that, Rena?
So warranties aren't necessarily a bad thing. So warranties are very different to indemnity. So without being too technical, it's an assurance which you're giving to the buyer. And actually, as a seller, you have an opportunity to actually water down those warranties in what you call a disclosure letter. So, and the way I like to describe a disclosure letter is your confessions. So the disclosure letter is all your confessions, and all you're doing is watering down the warranties. So it's great that the buyer is asking for warranties, because a seller, and if you've got a good lawyer, that is, will go through the warranties, qualify them to awareness, and then disclose them in the disclosure letter. So actually, there's no comeback on you after you've sold, which is your aim. You know, as a seller, you want to sell, get the money, and then off you go into the sunset. But if you've got a good lawyer, then the warranties shouldn't scare you.
I like that. So just to clarify for the audience, how does that differ from an indemnity? How is an indemnity different?
So a warranty is an assurance, a promise, which a seller gives to the buyer. For example, a warranty that there are no employee claims. And if that turns out to be untrue post-completion, then the buyer can bring a claim against the seller for breach of contract. And they can claim for damages. So they can say, this is our loss, we had to pay out the employee, this is what we're now going to recover from you. But remember, they have a duty to mitigate their damages. So just because they've paid out 50 grand to this employee doesn't mean that they're going to automatically recover 50 grand plus their fees, etc. from you. They have to mitigate their loss. An indemnity is very, very different. An indemnity is saying that you will reimburse them. When I say you, I mean the seller will reimburse the buyer on a pound for pound basis. So if part of the due diligence process, it transpires that there is an employee claim which is live and it's going to be settled, but it may not be, and the business is sold, the buyer will say to the seller, look, we'll still complete, but we want an indemnity from you because we're inheriting this live liability. So if we have to deal with this post-completion or payout, then you will indemnify us on a pound for pound basis. So whatever I as a buyer have to spend to make that go away, you, Mr. Seller, are going to reimburse me on a pound for pound basis. So that's a key difference.
Brilliant. I haven't heard any lawyer explain it as clearly as that. So yeah, an indemnity, basically you're keeping on the hook for future liabilities. Something that comes out of the woodwork. When people have mentioned it to me, I haven't done such a, I don't normally give such a articulate and eloquent description. I go back on the front foot and say, why on earth wouldn't you want any warranties or indemnities? What are you hiding in your business? just to see what skeletons there might be, because usually there's a reason. There's always a reason someone asks a question, isn't it? And it's not always the obvious why they're asking that question. That's when you find out that factories are burned down, or people have got a criminal record, or they're being sued, or they're in a tribunal, employment tribunal.
But also, Rob, going back to the beginning of this webinar, and you said to get the best price for the business. If you're not, if as a seller, you're not going to be open and transparent and give warranties, indemnities, go through the disclosure exercise properly, etc., then the buyer may still want your business, but then that will be reflected in the price. So you may, as a seller, not get the price that you wanted or that you could have got.
That's a very good point, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Last question, quickly. I'm mindful of time. Gary's asked, how do you find buyers? I think that's more angled to me, Rena, than yourself. I'm actually going to cover that in the next session. So if you don't mind, Gary, I'll move that across and make sure that question is answered for you in the next session. Is there a final thought, Rena, from you in terms of the theme of how to sell a business for a premium price? Any sort of top tip that you want to leave the audience with at the end of this session?
Top tip is to instruct the right people at the beginning. Don't wait until you found a buyer or you've mentally exited from the business. If you are toying with the idea, or this webinar is making you think about it a bit more seriously, this is the time, whether or not you get in touch with me or Rob or anyone else, but get the right professionals on board at the right time to guide you through it. I appreciate that it might be a bit of a cost at the beginning, but you will save massively throughout the process as well with the right guidance.
Yeah, because getting the wrong guidance or wrong advice or wrong steer could, with many businesses, cost them millions ultimately by not selling. The cost of not selling is the biggest cost, really, for most businesses, not only financially, but also emotionally as well, because you've built yourself up to look forward to life after sale. So, okay, well, thank you for that. And thank you for tuning in. I'm going to stop the recording shortly, and I look forward to tomorrow's session. Thank you for now. Thanks, Rena.
Thank you. Thank you.